I'm running potentially multiple applications or developing against multiple applications at a time. So I need a lot of horsepower, a lot of RAM available to me to be able to develop effectively. It's one of those things, not even the decision of do I go with another platform or a Mac? It's just, how much, RAM am I going to put in the new machine that I'm ordering?
Welcome to Macpreneur, the show for seasoned solopreneurs looking to streamline their business on a Mac. Unlock the secrets to saving time and money with your host and technology mentor, Damian Schruers.
Hello. Today I have the pleasure to introduce Brian Childress. Brian is an accomplished technologist who has successfully built and scaled software. He is an avid adventurer enjoying skiing and rock climbing. Brian, welcome to the show.
Damian, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, thanks for coming into the show. I'm happy to have a fellow technologist today as a guest in the podcast. It's really nice. So let's dive deep into your current setup. So which Macs are you using today to run your business?
So right now I have a 21 M1 MacBook Pro, a iPad Pro as well. Those are the two big pieces. And then the iPhone 13. I think those are the key components that allow me to run my business from anywhere in the world.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the split for you between the MacBook Pro and the iPad Pro, and maybe some use cases for the iPad?
Most of my work is done on the MacBook Pro. The iPad Pro, I've really started to use that as a way to kind of draw and illustrate the things that I'm talking about. In my work, I work with teams all over the world. And I think, many of us recognize that if someone's not sitting right next to us and we're able to point to the same exact physical thing, it can be really difficult to communicate what we're talking about, especially complex topics. So I use the iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil to draw out just very rough sketches. And I found that has been an absolute game changer in the way that I communicate with my teams.
Mm-hmm. And so you share the iPad screen via Zoom or Teams or something like that? That's how you do it?
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll share the iPad screen. We'll just draw, it's amazing what we can do with drawing boxes and triangles and circles and being able to use that to illustrate what we're talking about, more complex topics, whether it's a software system architecture or a way that we're going to scale the sales and marketing process within the business. All of that can be really communicated well. And then I'll take those notes, transform them into something a bit more high fidelity, and those become part of the documentation for that team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for the listeners who maybe are used to use Zoom, but not so much, you can share much more than the Mac screen. I remember there are two ways, right? Either you connect the iPad or the iPhone with the cable, or you can do it even wirelessly.
Yeah, you can. What can be tricky sometimes is how you share the screen on the different platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to use something like QuickTime and start a movie recording and then using the iPad screen as the source. And then you share the QuickTime window as what you're sharing. What I've started to do more recently is actually I'm using OBS Studio, I think it's Open Broadcast. And I use that and then have an overlay of what I'm actually drawing on the iPad. So you're able to still look at me and communicate, but I can draw on top of basically my own picture. Mm-hmm. And I found that just it gives a different way to kind of talk about things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very interesting. If we go back in time, what was your first Mac? When did you find the Mac and start using that platform?
I started using Mac professionally in 2010. I think that's when I first got my very first MacBook Pro. At that time, it was a fully spec'd out, still had the CD drive on the side. And that was when the Apple monitor first came out as well. So I had both of those. I think it was a 27-inch monitor. Man, I was ready to go. That's when I was really writing a lot of software professionally. And so having a Mac really enabled me to write better software. Just the way the systems that I was interacting with, really that made it a big difference in my workflow.
Mm-hmm. So maybe we can dive into that, Ellie. So, in your line of work, what do you find the most interesting? What's useful for you in the Mac from a developer kind of view, or software development kind of view?
So a lot of the systems that I'm building are kind of based off of a Linux architecture. So we're deploying to Linux servers. So the parity there is really nice. Now I know Windows has certainly, come a long way, but Mac has always just made it easy for me to then develop. I'm confident that the hardware will be there. It will be able to process. I'm running potentially multiple applications or developing against multiple applications at a time. So I need a lot of horsepower, a lot of RAM available to me to be able to develop effectively. Yeah, so it's one of those things. It's not even the decision of do I go with another platform or a Mac. It's just how much RAM am I going to put in the new machine that I'm ordering.
Mhm. And how much between the Apple provided developer tools like Xcode and third party apps do you use on your Mac?
Almost exclusively, I'm on third party platforms. So I'm using things like Visual Studio Code. I'm using iTerm or iTerminal for different terminal applications. I'm using Docker. And there's multiple ways that you can run something like a Docker desktop on the Mac. So most of what my workflow includes are using third party apps.
Mhm. And so, apart from the software development side of your business, what else do you use? What other apps do you use on your Mac?
The other big one for me is actually Obsidian. So I use that as, I think the term is second brain.
Mhm.
That's where I collect all my notes, whether it's personal, professional. I'm tracking information about clients that I'm working with or my 5-year vision for my life. All of that kind of goes into Obsidian. And that Obsidian information, as simple markdown documents, are synced with my Dropbox account. So then
Mhm.
I can easily share it across multiple different devices.
A long time ago, there was Evernote. It was basically everything, right? It was almost the only solution. And since then, there was an explosion of note taking apps. And also, Evernote has, I would say, degraded for me the experience more and more. And do you have experience with Evernote? Did you migrate from another tool to Obsidian? How did you end up with Obsidian?
I absolutely, yeah. I remember using Evernote professionally with a development team many years ago. That was our like shared wiki. Was you got access to Evernote? I think it's a great platform. What I was looking for was it didn't require me to sync with a platform all the time. So platforms like Notion, I use with a lot of my teams. That's where our preferred place for documentation exists. But I always found challenges with, hey, if I don't have internet access, I may not have the most up to date version, or I might not be able to access something at all. So I landed on Obsidian because I can run it locally and I can easily sync using something like Dropbox.
Mhm. Yeah, I've dabbled a little bit with Obsidian. Actually, when I decided to not renew my Evernote subscription, I was looking for a way to actually export and get a backup of my Evernote database. In the end, I didn't go with it. I went with Joplin, which is, I think, an open source alternative. And everything in Evernote that was a kind of a tabular format, I migrated either to Excel or to numbers because
Mhm.
I realized it made more sense. And what was mainly textual notes or easy to copy paste, then I also actually migrated some of it into Apple Notes. Which
Mm.
made sense for me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, what else? And maybe we could go to online services, right? What kind of online services do you use and do you access from your Mac?
Most of what I'm interacting with comes from Google. So I use a lot with Google Drive, Google Sheets. Because I have a number of different clients and companies that I work with, I have a lot of different email addresses and Google profiles that I switch between daily. Other ones I am using Notion. I'm using FreshBooks for my accounting. I'm using Dropbox to save files and sync files and share files with folks. I think those are really some of the bigger platforms that I use kind of regularly throughout my daily workflows.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm using FreshBooks as well. As soon as I started EasyTech in 2013, I I I hired an accountant. That was my first business decision. And and the second thing was, okay, let's find an easy to use tool to create invoices and manage this online stuff. And yeah, I've never looked back. It's really a great platform, FreshBooks.
Yeah, it's simple. It does exactly what you need from an accounting standpoint, at least in my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll put a link to all the tools that we discussed in the show notes. And also, I will put a link to an episode that I had in a previous season, where I covered actually a bunch of online accounting and bookkeeping tools that I covered in another season. Yeah,
Mhm.
very good. So let's go to the next segment of the show, the haha moment. What tip or trick did you discover on your Mac recently that you wished you had known before?
I don't remember how recently it was, but it has really changed a lot of my workflow, and that's just Spotlight using what is it, Command Spacebar to pop open the Spotlight, and I can kind of search anything everywhere from my applications to even searching the internet or document. I found that to be just a, one of those things. Like, man, this is so simple that it really does speed me up in switching between applications or opening up new applications.
Mhm. Yeah, one thing that I discovered after that, discovering the search functionality of Spotlight was the currency conversion, but also any kind of conversion. It's very good at that. So especially for me to convert from euro to dollars to US dollars or stuff like that. It's so useful. Command space, a few letters, and you got an answer.
Yeah.
Very good. Let's go to the next segment. So your number one Mac wish. So if you were in charge of the Mac division at Apple, what would be the first thing that you create or improve upon, or what would be your first priority?
I have to say that I'm so happy that the MagSafe adapter came back a few years ago. I held off for as long as possible in buying a new Mac because I wanted MagSafe to come back. I think my biggest challenge with the Apple ecosystem is around mostly in the software space. So things like Apple Notes, I've struggled with. Things like Freeform, I think are fantastic applications, but they're can be very laggy and they don't feel like there's a lot of attention, not the same level of attention that goes into the hardware has been put into the software. So typically that's where I go to other like third party applications. So if I'm drawing and sharing information using the iPad and the Apple Pencil, I'm using platforms or applications like Notability. I just found like that's just very crisp, very quick. I'm able to leverage that and not get frustrated that something like Apple Notes or Freeform are actually picking up on what I'm trying to draw.
Mhm. Yeah, that's something that I realized and I noticed as well with Apple. So it's primarily a hardware, consumer hardware company, even though they, and I think I have a theory that that's why they have to use the pro moniker because they're not really for professionals. They make an effort to appeal to professionals, but yeah, and so on the software side is more. Uh, I have the impression it's more an add-on than their main product, and so what I notice is that they seem to follow the 80-20 rule or the 90-10 rule, right? They offer the features that will appeal to maybe 80% or 90% of their user base, and the rest, right? That's why we have third-party tools and apps and so on. And yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. So very good. So thank you, Brian. Where can people find you online?
So I'm most active and prolific on LinkedIn right now. So I always encourage folks to reach out, connect with me there. It's Brian-Childress. I share a lot about what I'm learning with the clients that I'm working with, how to scale and build software. So that's a great place to connect.
Very good. Thank you. I will put a link in the show notes. Yeah, so thank you, Brian, for being on the show.
Damien, I really appreciate the chance to chat.
My pleasure. So, and if, like Brian, you would like to share how you are using your Mac to run your solopreneur business, it's easy. Just visit macpreneur.com/apply. If you're already on Podmatch, just click on the button and you will land on the show profile. Otherwise, just fill the application form and I'll get back to you within a few days. So once again, it's macpreneur.com/apply. In the comments below, please share your main takeaway from this episode. And if not done yet, please subscribe to my channel so you'll automatically get more helpful tips on how to run your business on your Mac. And until next time, Damien Schreurs, wishing you a great day.
Thank you for watching the Macpreneur podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave a comment and share it with a friend right now.